Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petraglia alongside Richard Skinner. We know him better as Skinny of Local 12 and Local12.com. And welcome to the final Jungle Roar Bengals postgame podcast, the final postgame podcast of the 2025, I guess you could call -26 season. The Bengals, in fitting fashion, according to Zac Taylor, lose their finale to the Cleveland Browns on an Andre Schmidt 49-yard field goal at the gun. 20-18 was the final score. Skinny, I think the game is pretty much secondary to what we're going to talk about long term, but we do have to talk about the game because even Zac Taylor acknowledged afterwards in his address to the team and what he told us about what he told the team after the loss that dropped into 6-11 on the season. It was a fitting fashion. We just failed to close out the game like we have in so many of the games that the Bengals were in this year. They could not make those one or two plays, especially today on the defensive side of the ball, to close out the game and walk away with a win.
5 one-score losses, or actually 5 losses by 6 points or less this season. 7 losses by 7 points or less last season. That's 12 losses in 2 years in one-score football games. That's frustrating because that feels fixable. It feels close, and yet it's also not close. Like today, you dominated Cleveland until, they put together one good drive at the end and one good drive to kick a field goal in the second half. And yet, for the 8th and 9th times this year, your offense gave up a touchdown off of a turnover. Can some of that be fluky? Sure. Noah Fant fumbled the ball 3 times this year, Mike. All 3 were returned for touchdowns. You know how many times he fumbled the last 5 years? None. Now you can argue, fluky. Is that a Bengals coaching thing? I don't think so. I do think it's just fitting way to end. And maybe it's enough of the kick in the teeth that we needed as opposed to a feel-good third straight win for everybody to grit their teeth and go, we got to do everything we can to fix this. Players, coaches, front office, everybody, because this showed we still aren't there.
Okay, I'm going to read you the stat of the game that stands out to me. There are a billion stats, right? There always are.
Yeah.
First half. You know what the Bengals' total net yardage was, Skinny?
I believe it was 231. Does that sound right?
Very good. Do you happen to have an idea of what Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns were able to muster up in first half net yardage?
I believe it was 40 net yards, Mike, and I believe the following. Correct. I believe the following is also true. The Bengals gave up as many defensive touchdowns as the Browns had first downs in the first half. The number being 2. It's insane. That's insane.
I'm speechless at the way the Bengals found ways to lose games in 2025. Ways that I don't even think Zac Taylor or Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. That's why I think there's a deep sense of frustration because nobody saw any of these losses coming. Sure, the defense was horrifically bad in the first 60% of the season. Let's call it the first 10 weeks of the year. Okay, bad. No excuse. I think, the nadir, if you will, the low point were the back-to-back losses to the Jets and the Bears.
Yes.
That's probably the low point. But when you take a look at the way the defense improved over the last several weeks, for them still to be 6-11 on the season, to me, is mind-boggling. And after the game, I think Jamar Chase was the one player, and I spoke to about 7 or 8 players in the Bengals locker room, that sensed a frustration to the degree of something's got to change. And I asked him that, and he said, that's not my job. And that's a smart, intelligent answer, and I totally get that. But when he was asked specifically by Jaron May, I believe it was, of WLWT, Channel 5, how much faith do you have in Zac Taylor and the coaching staff? His answer was, I have total faith in myself and my ability to make a play when my number is called. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's essentially what he said. How do you read those comments?
I read it that he doesn't have a lot of confidence apparently now in the coaching staff. I don't know how else you can read into that. I mean, he was asked, I think, do you have the utmost confidence? I think was how it was phrased in this coaching staff. And he said, I have confidence in myself, and to your point, I'll paraphrase the rest, my ability to get open when my number is called. Right. That didn't exactly sound like a ringing endorsement. Now, maybe it's frustration from today, where I think you'd agree with this, Mike. That offensive game plan was geared as much to protect Joe Burrow as it was to go win a football game. So Zac has said it was his decision to play Joe this week. I don't know if I totally believe that. I mean, I could see a front office. Yeah, I could see a front office going, hey, man, we got paying customers. We need to win a third game. You need to play Joe Burrow. Okay. Now, and of course, both he and Dan Pitcher this week, and rightfully so, they could probably say this even if that wasn't you're trying to save Joe Burrow's life for this week, talked about making sure Myles Garrett did not disrupt them and what a great player Myles is. And you could see a lot of blocking schemes on passing downs were designed to put two guys on Myles Garrett. Wisely so. You probably would do that anyway, but it seemed like there was a major focal point. There was also a major focal point on Joe Burrow getting the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible. There wasn't a lot of deep shots down the field. There were a couple times Joe extended plays. There was the one we all laughed at that was funny where Joe scrambled and looked like the smallest dog. Yeah, he looked like the smallest dog in the neighborhood being chased by the biggest dog going, "Are you catching me? Are you catching me?" when he turned around. And it was a funny moment. But I think that's the frustration too of and maybe Jamar doesn't even understand that. Like, this game plan sucked because all we did was get it out quick. We had a quick game, and why didn't we do more? And maybe he doesn't understand that maybe this decision was above Zac Taylor, and he's biting the bullet for this decision. And I was really interested in that. I guess you can flip side it is Joe Burrow said he has confidence in the coaching staff and people in the front office to get it right. But I thought it was telling what Jamar said, whether it was heat of the moment. I can't say it was taken out of context because it wasn't, and I know he's very measured in what he says too. I think he's handled himself great in post-game frustration moments. I think today was him going, I don't know, man, maybe not. Maybe this isn't the guys to lead us.
Another Jamar moment came when he was asked about Zac Taylor's fitting comment. And he said, he sounded befuddled, I think, at the approach and the laissez-faire.
I think I've got the answer. I think I've got that quote here, Mike, just so we can give it context.
Go ahead,
and I think you're right. Give me 1 second while I do this. I'm scrolling down. Hang on, I got the wrong guy up. I had Joe up. Now I got Jamar.
Can I get it to you?
I got it.
Okay, go.
He goes, I don't even know what that means, where he said it was a fitting way to end the season. I don't even know what that means. I'm going to be honest. Y'all got to keep that question with him. That's not for me. But then he did say this, and I think he's right about this. Everybody should be motivated who's on the team for the past 3 years. They know how it's been. At the end of the day, I'm going to say this. If you go into the offseason and you're not motivated from what happened this season, you shouldn't be on the team. You shouldn't play football, period. Don't disagree.
No, I think Jamar Chase and some other leaders on the team quietly, but specifically and most vocally, Jamar Chase is a captain of the offense, is upset that more players aren't upset. And I gather that from those kind of comments after the game. Like, if you really go deep into the weeds, I think Jamar is sick and tired of, oh, well, we gave it our best. There's always next year. We're going to build the team back. And ironically, one of his best friends on the team, arguably his best and closest friend on the team, Joe Burrow, comes off occasionally. And we can talk about what he had to say in his post-game press conference. But Joe comes off more kind of, we're just going to do what we do in the offseason. I'm going to take time away, and we'll get it straight. Obviously, there's urgency. But I just think the tenor of the two athletes is very different when you look at them side by side, especially after a game like today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Although I think the tenor of Joe Burrow was spoken a couple of weeks ago in that week of leading up to the Baltimore game. Like, I've made my point already on this topic, and I'm not going to make it again. Although he also reiterated this past Wednesday, we all changes need to be made. We know changes need to be made. So I do think their frustration level is a little bit different, but I think Jamar looks and sees himself of, I want to be in the spot. I think Joe does too, but I think Jamar really wants to be in the spotlight. He wants to be in the postseason. He wants to be the greatest in this game. I think losing eats at both of them in different ways. I think Joe understands how to probably hide that a little bit more. Again, I got to give Jamar a lot of credit because I think you would agree with this, Mike. The times we've talked to him after games, after a couple of losses, we were waiting for a powder keg moment. Today was interesting. I don't think it was powder keg moment, but I think we were all waiting for that. But I get it, man. If you're a competitor and you've had the seasons let me think about the seasons Jamar Chase has had. And you haven't been to the playoffs the last 3 years with that cat doing the things he's doing? I mean, right? What are we doing, guys? Fix this.
What are we doing? I want to get to this play because it bugged me, and you know how much it bugged me.
I do. It bugged everybody I know. It's been brought up to me a billion times already.
Okay. 4th and 1, Bengals have the ball at the Cleveland 45. 4th and 1 in a game that you trail 14-6. And there is, 10 minutes to go in the second quarter. You line up at in a run formation, and you try to draw the Browns offside. You don't try to go for it. And then with 4th and 6 at midfield, you decide to punt the ball away. The whole stadium should have been booing that
I agree.
decision. And if you're trying to protect Joe Burrow, if that's the excuse,
hand the ball off.
Then he shouldn't be on the field, Skinny. Like, you put Joe Flacco in. Ironically, what did the Bengals do in the third quarter when they had a similar situation?
Put Joe Flacco
third
in.
and one. Third and one, not 4th and 1, but 3rd and 1. Joe Flacco's in there. And Zac Taylor after the game said, well, why did you put Joe in, Flacco in? Well, bigger body. We wanted to give him a chance to do something that he's familiar doing, and he's got the body for it. We could have done that there and win the game. Aren't you trying to win the game?
That's the part that's so frustrating, right? So they've talked about how important it was that our focus this week is all on beating the Browns. And
right.
Even if let's just say the Bengals today were going for a 2 seed, right? And you're trailing 14-6. You're probably going for it on 4th and 1. That should mean you'd go for it on 4th and 1 in a meaningless game in their plus territory ad infinitum. That is so confounding. That's so confounding to me.
If you're not trying to win the game, the most important player in franchise history should not be on the field.
Well, again,
don't give me this.
You're allowed to hand the ball off.
You are allowed to hand the ball off. I don't think Joe Burrow would be endangering an ACL or Achilles.
I don't think so either.
By handing off to Samaje Perine on 4th and half a yard. The other moment I want to get to, and it really underscores the Bengals' lack of organization. You know the one I'm talking about?
I probably do.
And that would be at the end of the first quarter, I believe it was. It was at the end of the first quarter. Bengals have the ball at, I'm trying to find the notes here. Yes. 2nd and 10 at their 30. They go into the quarter. They get time to discuss what they're going to do coming out. Start the second quarter.
Discussed it so long it took you too much time.
What is their first move out of the out of the quarter intermission? What is their first move? Not a handoff, not a play action.
Timeout, Cincinnati. First charge, timeout.
We don't really know what we're going to do.
I mean, what are we doing?
Please don't give me this. We wanted to see their formation. We went. Come on. You've got third. You've got 2nd and 2 at your own 38.
You dictate the play call there.
Correct. Those two moments to me stand out.
They were bizarre. I'm with you. I mean, if you're looking to, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't want to get to this. It's not probably even part of this podcast. But if you're looking for reasons to fire a coach in an ugly season, ugly loss, an ugly stretch, those two would make you go, I can't watch any more of this. I mean, those were two confounding situations.
If you had a genuine football general manager, that general manager in there walk out, wrap up season-ending interview like the head coach has with all his players, would ask questions like that. How can we be better? How do you expect your staff to be better in a moment like that?
Great. Mike, they have an analytics guy, Sam Francis, who's very well respected. He's the one that a lot of times will try to talk things out ahead of time. Like, hey, if we get to 4th and 1 here, let's go ahead and go. Or, hey, if it's 4th and 3 here, probably not the time. Let's go ahead and punt. And again, you still weigh that decision. Doesn't mean he makes the final decision for you. I can't imagine an analytics guy on 4th and 1 on the plus whatever in a meaningless game would go, yeah, try to get him to draw. We'll take the delay and we'll punt. I mean, honestly, even at that point of trying to draw them, you can take a timeout and go ahead and run a play after that. Like, I don't mind teams trying to get people to jump. I don't. I think that's fine. But your plan B should be not taking a 5-yard penalty and punting. It should be, all right, take a timeout, now let's go run a play. That's one of the most confounding decisions of Zac Taylor's tenure to me, in my opinion. In this particular game, that you choose to try to draw them off, take the delay, and punt. What doing?
What about Duke Tobin? Look, I don't think Zac Taylor is going anywhere. I know a lot of the national talking heads who are really wired in, both nationally and locally, believe and said Sunday morning before the 1 p.m. Window of NFL games that Zac Taylor is pretty safe. I don't know about Duke Tobin. I think he'll be back with the Bengals next year, but in what capacity? To me, that's the story to watch this week and maybe going forward.
It just depends on how much the organization listens to the outside noise, and they don't seem to listen to it very much. We've requested Duke a bunch of times, right, Mike, and still haven't made him available, and I think that's awfully cowardice of all of them involved. I think
they don't care.
We've all talked about the easiest question to ask right now is, why do you think you're the guy to fix this roster and make this roster better? And listen, if he's got a good answer for it, I'm all ears, man. I'll listen to you. Correct. As opposed to hiding, which makes it look like you don't have answers.
Well,
and the organization realizes, if we don't feed the fans something, we might be in trouble from a ticket perspective. They don't seem to care about any of that stuff at the moment, and I think that's really, really frustrating.
So here's my theory on that. I don't think it's the decision of Duke Tobin. I think it's
I think it is too. I think you're right. I think that's right.
Blackburn family, because if they expose him to a press conference like that, it could shine a light on the competency or lack thereof of the ownership and their football knowledge. Because a lot of teams that try to do what the Bengals are doing have football lifers who have generations of football knowledge personally on which to draw upon. The Rooneys certainly are a great example of that. The Maras, I know they're going through a terrible time right now, but the Maras obviously have 4 Super Bowls in the trophy case.
George Young was pretty good.
And George Young was one of the best ever.
Yeah.
I think the Bengals had something in Bill Tobin, Duke's dad, but for whatever reason, it has not translated down to Duke in terms of football evaluation and getting players in the draft that can contribute right away. And that's the Bengals' biggest need right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, but let's face this. Mike Brown is a football lifer. He was on the front office staff of the very first Bengals franchise in 1968 as a personnel guy. His son, Little Paul Brown, who I don't know what his background in football is, other than he's got the name of Paul Brown, and he's been around the organization forever. I don't know how involved he is, but he has a personnel title. You have only a handful of scouts. Troy Blackburn and Katie Blackburn are very business side, and a lot of times the business side is so hard line, it's caused some issues and rifts there. The Shamar Stewart example and some of the other contract situations. So they have football lifers. Katie's a football lifer. Troy Blackburn's a football. They're football lifers. But they're not competent football lifers, and that's the problem. Until you bring in somebody with legitimate chops from outside, where you go, hey, this isn't just somebody that's been in the family or in the organization for a long time, and we enjoy working with them. Until you truly bring in somebody from the outside that can take a 40,000-mile view of this organization, I just don't know how it changes. Can you occasionally have the blip on the radar screen, which you've had a couple of times in their tenure? You sure can, but can you do it consistently enough to be a winner? Well, you haven't won a Super Bowl yet, and people can throw the argument at me, well, there's a bunch of other teams that haven't either. You know what? There's not a lot of them that haven't.
That's not your goal. Your goal is not to be like
correct. That's
the
correct.
Atlanta Falcons.
Fair point. Great point.
Is to be like the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Great. No, that's a great point, Mike. That's exactly right. And that's the part that I think as a fan should frustrate the daylights out of you, because it's not that they don't want to win. They do. It's not that they're cheap. It's that they think their way is the best way, and they're the smartest people in the room, and all of us outsiders are stupid, and we'll show you. Well, you haven't shown us enough, and you haven't shown us to the ultimate prize yet, which is a Super Bowl. And until you fix it, you're going to keep chasing your tail, man, in my opinion.
I have a different read on this. My read is I think they know they're not the brightest football people in the room. They do not want to cede power of their football operations.
No,
There's
I agree with that.
there.
No, you're right.
And I think that supersedes everything. That
That's
supersedes the need or the desire to do everything you can in the offseason to win a Super Bowl. And I don't think they're committed to that. Sure, they'll sign free agents. Joe Burrow did mention that in his press conference, and we'll certainly get to that. You know what? Let's get to it right now.
Okay, sure.
Joe Burrow, after the game, in a 15-and-a-half-minute press conference, because it's going to be his last meeting with the media for several months, I think up until April, right? Skinny?
Yeah, probably April when we get back to OTAs.
Right. Do you think your championship mindset is being matched by the organization? Great question. I sure hope so. I know everyone's frustrated right now. There's a disconnect during the season. We're down here focused on the date, meaning the players and coaches, trying to get better. And it's their job upstairs to focus on the big picture. I know they're committed to that. Well, what about free agency this March, Joe? That's of paramount importance. You have to identify where you're weak and figure out a way to be strong in that area. That's the NFL year in and year out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to attack that, period, with an intent to get better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. They were able to do that in 2021, where they had money to spend and a singular focus, essentially. Well, not singular, because they had to work the offensive line a little bit too. But this time around, you get a chance to really have a singular focus on one side of the ball. I mean, could you use a backup swing tackle who can play more than Cody Ford and better than Cody Ford? Sure. Could you lose a little more depth at guard? Okay. Could you use a better, more dynamic third wide receiver? Okay, but those are like numbers 7, 8, 9 in the pecking order. Could you use more pass rush juice on the outside? Yep. Could you use more pass rush juice on the inside? Yep. Could you use a veteran linebacker to maybe help these two kids and maybe play side by side with that guy and let the other kid be a third linebacker for you and kind of get the ball rolling there? Yep. Could you use a slot corner? Sure could. Could you use a little more depth at corner? Absolutely. Do you need at least one starting safety? You sure do. Do you need maybe a second starting safety? Yeah, maybe. Can't do all that in free agency, but between free agency and the draft, you should be able to accomplish most of those goals.
How many of the 11 defensive starters should return next year? Regulars. Well, we'll call. I'll throw that door open to about 12 or 13. 13 regulars on defense.
All right, I'm going to go back end, front end. Jordan Battle's in the mix. I think there's been bright lights and certainly low lights for him, but the bright lights have been good enough to make you go, he's at least a rotational safety. And if the right guy comes along, I think he's a nice. Is
he better than Nick Scott?
Yes, although Nick Scott's starting on a playoff team now with the Carolina Panthers, in case anybody cares.
There's a reason I brought that up.
Yeah.
Continue.
But yes, I think he is better than Nick Scott. DJ Turner and Dax Hill without question. And I think one of your priorities this offseason, you have to at least re-up one of them long-term and probably both of them long-term, in my opinion. I think that needs to be one of your priorities. And that's going to take away some free agency money probably too, but I think that has to happen. Could I live with the two rookie linebackers? I could. I just need something more dynamic and better than Oren Burks as the third linebacker to like where you go, okay, the kid's struggling today again a little bit. Let's get somebody else in there who can slow it down and understands. I think that's one. To me, again, we don't know about Shamar Stewart. We did see Miles Murphy, and I think Miles Murphy, at the very least, you go, he's a capable starting end. I think there's more there, but at least you found out that he's a capable starting end. I'm not here to tell you he's a great starting end, a difference-making starting end. Neither was Sam Hubbard. Capable starting end. And then on the inside, I don't know what I got. I really don't. Chris Jenkins was hurt. McKinley Jackson, it's not played very much. I thought TJ Slayton was very disappointing. BJ Hill's getting up there in years, and you may have to wind up eating his contract. So you need a bunch of help in that interior. So to me, there's not a lot of those guys. Maybe 5 at most on paper penned in. Maybe another penciled in. That's at least 5 guys you got to go figure out to go get. I mean, like Jalen Davis, I thought was really good as a slot corner when he played, but he's a backup caliber player, and that's fine. I'll take him in a backup role.
Sure.
I thought he did enough to show you he should be a back. I mean, I thought Al Golden told us the other day, I thought it was a great comment of, he's been in this league kicking around for 8 years. I think he's earned himself a ninth. I think he has too, just not as a starter.
No. Okay, Trey Hendrickson, what happens?
I let him walk. I don't know what else. I'm not going to franchise tag him and paying that because, again, he's now coming off of a surgery, and he'll be 32 next year, late next year, but he'll be 32 next year, late next year. He needed to ball out this year to get paid, and he just didn't, either through the injury, through his own, missing the time he missed that maybe set him back. I have to let him walk, and what sucks about that is you had a chance to get something of trade value for him at some point, whether it be in March or April or at the trade deadline when I don't think anybody knew he was going to need surgery at that point. Somebody probably would have taken it on for something. And I know people will say, well, you get a third-round comp in free agency. No, you won't, because you know what? You're going to have to sign so many free agents that's going to wash that third-round comp out, and you're not going to get that third-round comp. So you blew this big time. You can't tag him, Mike. I mean, maybe if he tests the market, and maybe you let him go test the market, and teams go 1 year, $15 million. And he's like, wait, what? I mean, one of the premier no, you're not anymore. You're not. And you're coming off an injury. If it comes to the point where you can get him back on a 1 year, $12 million prove it deal, like Joseph Osai was a $1 million or a 1 year, $8 million prove it deal this year. And I thought Joseph showed some things, but if you can do that with Trey, I might entertain the idea of bringing him back, but otherwise have a great career somewhere else. You did your time here and you did well for most of it.
Here's the issue with the Bengals defense to me. They need playmakers. They also need leaders.
Yeah.
They need dogs that come in and just kick each other in the teeth in practice and get after it and have an attitude, a nastiness. You and I are in that locker room almost every day of every week of every season. Do you sense that?
No,
in that locker room?
I sensed it with Von Bell. I sure sensed it with him. I don't sense. I mean, like Jordan Bowles a great kid. He's just a goof. I mean, he's a goof. Geno Stone doesn't play at a high enough level to be a leader. The two linebackers both, I think, have leadership skills, but they're trying to figure it out still. It's hard to lead when you're trying to figure it out and you're not doing your job to the best of your ability. B.J. Hill has some leadership ability, but again, it goes back to he's just not good enough anymore. So why am I going to listen to this guy when he ain't making plays? So, yeah, they do need some of that for sure.
I know some fans would like to see DJ Reader come back. Your thoughts on that?
Just depends on the money of it. Again, an older guy, what's left in the tank. He's certainly a leader. There's no question about that. He's a great voice to have in that locker room. If you think there's something left in the tank, I would much rather have DJ Reader than TJ Slayton. And I like TJ Slayton as a person. He was a good guy, but he's not very good.
DJ Reader is somebody who got after it and got after others along the defense.
Yeah, I just don't know what's left in the tank, Mike. I think that's the only question mark.
Understood. And you can't just bring back a cheerleader.
Sure,
he
that's
needs
correct.
to be productive, and that's why Jermaine Pratt was no longer on the roster. Why Logan Wilson was no longer on the roster. Both of those guys, terrific leaders.
Yep.
But they weren't playing to the level where they could stay on the field. Very much a blip on the radar and an anomaly, certainly. Evan McPherson in a game. It's so ironic. The bookend to this bizarre season started with Andre Schmidt missing an extra point and missing, I think it was a 36-yard field goal in Cleveland. That would have beaten the Bengals. Bengals win that game 17-16. Well, what does this game come down to? The Browns trailing by a point, 18-17, drive down the field. They manage the clock and set Andre Schmidt up for the game winner from 49, and he kicks it through the uprights as the gun goes off, and the Browns win the game. Andre Schmidt, the hero. Evan McPherson misses 2 extra points in this game, one of which was tipped. Zac Taylor made that observation after the game. What did you think of the year Evan McPherson had?
I thought he was great. I mean, other than today was just weird. The tipped one initially, and then I don't know if he tried to overcompensate with the next one to make sure it didn't get tipped, but that's just bizarre to miss 2 extra points. This is a guy that I don't have it in front of me, but for a large chunk of the year, and it may have held true, he was perfect from inside 40 yards out this year. From inside 50 yards out this year. his misses up to then were the one in Green Bay where he made a 67-yarder, only have it wiped out, and then had to kick it again and missed it. The one he kicked with the K ball, or with the non-kicking ball rather, with the regular ball that died on the vine because he was kicking with a rock. And one other, I mean, he'd been really good, and it does get magnified today. But I would also say again, don't give up 2 touchdowns, offensive turnovers leading to touchdowns, and you don't have to worry about those extra points. They don't even come into play.
No, but it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, weird.
To use the term of Zac Taylor, it was fitting, Skinny.
It was.
That this game came down to a field goal kicker redeeming himself from the
Yeah, I mean, Schmidt he was so vilified in Cleveland because it was like, who is this kid? He won some kind of weird kicker battle. They weren't really even sure about him. And then he was such a dud in the opener. Like, there was a lot of conversation of, well, he kicked in his last NFL game, and here he is still going, actually having a pretty good year when all's said and done, and boots the game winner. What a full 180 moment for this season, and that was a fitting way for it to end for everybody probably.
I'm not trying to kick the guy when he's down. Is Noah Fant back
No.
with the Bengals in 2026? Because I feel terrible for the guy.
I do too.
You can't do that. You can't put the ball on the ground 3 times as a Joe Burrow target and then have all 3 of those returned for touchdowns, and the one today was just a backbreaker.
Yeah, I think the only way is if they find out sometime in this offseason that Eric All just is not going to be able to make it back, that it's just the injuries have been too much, and they maybe then no, because Noah filled that 3-down Eric All role where he could be a blocker, receiver, all those things. I think if Eric All they think is going to be healthy, then I think Noah Fant served his purpose, which was a 1-year stopgap. But boy, what a weird year. Hadn't fumbled in 5 years. That's 3 fumbles, all returned for touchdowns.
All right. I asked Zac Taylor about this particular offensive weapon for the Bengals after the game, and I think he deserves a good portion of our time because to me, I think you could make the argument, and he was my vote for MVP of the Bengals, Chase Brown.
Yeah,
I know Jamar Chase had great numbers. I totally understand that. Finished with 8 touchdowns, almost broke his own record for team catches. He had, I think, 125, fell too short of the mark last year. But Chase Brown went over 1,000 yards for the season on Sunday, and he needed 53 yards. And I think on the afternoon, let me get the stats up.
70-ish, 72-ish.
He had 13 carries for 72 yards, a 5.5 yards per pop average. That's pretty doggone good. And he had a touchdown reception today. I think you got out of Chase Brown pretty much everything you wanted to see from him coming into the season.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a weird, slow start that it looked like he was never going to get on track. But when he did, he winds up with almost 1,500 yards from scrimmage. And I think we talked about this before the season started. I thought he had a chance to have a 2,000-yard from scrimmage season. I think that's very much in play. I think that's very much in him to be able to have that. So yeah, I was very impressed. I know 1,000 yards rushing isn't what it used to be in the old 14-game seasons and 12-game seasons. Those were special, but it's still a milestone. It's still a landmark, and he did it after a very, very slow start where you weren't even sure if he was going to get to 300 yards rushing on the season. So, major weapon. Got to find more ways to utilize him. Get him a few more touches a game. He averaged about 17 touches a game this year. I'd love to see that get to 20 because I just think he adds a dynamic that they need on this offense to take some pressure off of Chase and Higgins.
I was 10 yards off last year, Chase Brown said after the game. I got injured in Week 16 against the Broncos. It feels good to finish off the year with that statistical number, but there's still a lot more we want to achieve as a team. I like that attitude from Chase Brown. I like what I hear from that guy. More importantly, I like what I see from that guy if I'm the Bengals.
Yeah, pro player on the field and a pro player off the field in their preparation. I like a lot about Chase Brown. And I'm not a big second contract guy for running backs. I just think he means enough to this team where he's going to get extended to for a second contract.
This is a Bengals podcast, but I think we'd be pretty remiss if we didn't talk about an NFL record that was established today and how it was established and how close the Bengals were to denying Myles Garrett his 23rd sack of the year, breaking the old record of 22 and a half held by both Michael Strahan in 2001 and TJ Watt 20 years later in 2021. A new record for Myles Garrett. The Bengals were none too pleased, and leading with Zac Taylor, that, yes, they celebrated the moment, but they allowed the officials, allowed the entire Cleveland sideline, essentially, for all intents and purposes, to come on the field and celebrate with Myles Garrett in the middle of a drive, the second to last Bengals drive that they had on the game. And the Bengals were trying to go no huddle. And it was so hilarious listening to Jamar Chase after the game talk about this. And he said, F, man, I hope they do that when I'm near the end of my career. And Zac Taylor said that none of the officials informed them that they had decided to stop the game, allow the Browns to have their moment. Well, what if it's in the middle of a drive? Well, Zac Taylor said they didn't address that. We had no recourse. The umpire, I believe it was, stood over the ball and held play until the officials deemed it was time to carry on with the game. No penalty on the Browns. Look, I get it. If you're the Cleveland Browns, you want to celebrate that moment. That's fine. Take the 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty and recognize the fact that you disrupted the game in a game the Bengals are trying to win.
Yeah, no, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I think records should be celebrated and honored, but that record at that point should have been celebrated and recognized after that drive was over. You don't do that in the middle of a drive. I'm sorry, you just don't. I know when O.J. Simpson went over 2,000 yards, they stopped the game for a moment, hoisted him, all those things. But that wasn't the Bills in the middle of a drive. That's on them. You don't do it on, you shouldn't do that on defense. I mean, the other team's trying to go score, and sometimes tempo is a part of scoring. I thought a penalty should have been thrown, and they should have said, you guys came on the field, that's too many men on the field, get off, and we're going to continue the game right now, and let's go. I don't begrudge him the record. Nobody begrudges the record. I just thought that was Bush League.
That's exactly what Jamar Chase indicated after the game. Nothing but respect for Myles Garrett. I think what he did was pretty amazing, but we're trying to win a freaking game.
Yeah.
And look, the optics to me are the NFL realizes this game does not have playoff significance. They want the signature moment, right, for Myles Garrett that they can play over and over and over, and him getting to celebrate on the field. The rest of the game be damned. And that's just the marketing of the NFL.
Yeah, it is.
Taking superiority, and I should say priority, over what happens on the field. And I understand why that really pissed off Zac Taylor.
I agree. No, I think they should have been pissed off by it.
Let me ask you this. What, if you're Zac Taylor, what are the questions you're asking the players as they break up on Monday morning?
What can we change in training camp to make us better long term? I know it's weird. They got off to the hot start they were hoping to get off and then didn't. What changes can we make? What can we do better to continue a hot start? I really don't know what else there is to ask the players, to be honest with you, because I think the players do respect the way he treats them, the way he handles their minutes and time in season. And I think there's something to that. I really do. So I really don't know what answers he's expecting to get from the players on something like that.
Look, part of the title of this podcast is, will the Bengals change their stripes this offseason? And that is not really directed towards the players or really even the coaching staff. It's general from 40,000 feet above. Will this franchise start to do things differently? We saw glimpses of it in 2020 and 2021, no question, and it resulted in a Super Bowl run in 21 and almost another in 22. But it seems like since then, they've been back to being the same old except mediocrity, because it's the best we can be.
Yeah, I think most of the changes, in my opinion, come from the front office and what do they do to attack the offseason from a free agency and draft standpoint. I don't know if there's anything different Zac Taylor can do in terms of preparation. I mean, I guess if I'm a player, do I want to go harder in training camp? I probably don't. Do I want to go harder during the week? I probably don't. I just want to make sure I'm getting prepared. So I don't know what kind of answers he would get to that. I think the answer is always to me, point right to the front office and what are you going to do to change the way you operate?
All right. I want to ask you this because this is our final post-game podcast of the season. Who do you like in the playoffs? Why? And a Super Bowl winner for me.
I know Seattle's the chic pick at the moment, and I know Philly lost today with backups. I think Philly has just been somewhat bored by the regular season, and I think they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. I just think they have too much going for them, especially on defense. And in the AFC, I'm going to go off the wall here a little bit. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. That defense is really, 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 really good. I can count on that defense. And they've got a little playoff experience for C.J. Stroud and the rest of that crew to have gone through it before. They're kind of that in a weird year in the AFC. I think they are the 5 seed, and they'll have to play at the winner of the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game in the first game. I think it's a winnable game for them, and I think that gets them some momentum. So I'm going off the wall with Houston in the AFC.
I shout out from my daughter's boyfriend, Chirac. Janie is my oldest daughter. And when I asked him the same question, and he is a very knowledgeable football fan, very knowledgeable. And he said, do not go against the Houston Texans. That defense can stop anybody. And anybody who saw the game on Sunday night against Kansas City several weeks ago, I think that was a pretty good indication of what their ceiling could be. And if they play at that level,
I agree.
I think they can shut anybody down. Chic pick might be the New England Patriots, but I like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just think they are playing the best football.
They are playing great
consistently for the better part of the last half of the season. I like Jacksonville. I want to pick the Bills, but I think their path is too difficult.
I do too.
I just do. And I think they're a one-trick pony with Josh Allen. The one trick is pretty amazing. There are drives where he looks like a world beater, but then again, the Eagles beat him last week for at least for 3.5 quarters. So I like Jacksonville in the AFC, and I'm with you with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. And I like the Philadelphia Eagles to repeat as Super Bowl champions.
There we go. I like it.
What are you working on, Skinny, for local12.com?
Yeah, just tying the Jamar Chase comments post-game and Joe Burrow's comments and just how that all kind of spins into how important this offseason is for this team. Because if Joe Burrow's sitting at a podium around his 30th birthday next year like he was this year, shell-shocked, we got some real problems, my friend.
Oh. Yeah, we do. And here's hoping that he isn't, because I think both of us would agree it's more enjoyable when this team is successful.
Yep.
I think the fans are more engaged. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think the excitement around the team, it's exciting to cover a team that's in the mix and could win and make history, and that is, of course, winning its first Super Bowl trophy. Skinny, we'll definitely get together on the Jungle Roar podcast, postseason edition,
yep,
off-season edition, no question about that.